All right, what's up, everybody? So I'm back at it again, like always. The next book that's on my list to do on what I've learned from reading this book is called The Lost Realms, which comes from Zachariah Sitchin. It's his fourth book of the Earth Chronicles, and it's an interesting book, but just like all his other books, he talks about, you know, the similarities between the different religions and mythologies from around the world, which is pretty interesting. But at the fact of the matter is that some things he exaggerated on and some things he put his own narrative in, and that's what I'm trying to do, is just trying to give you the basic understanding of what I've learned from reading his books along. Right here, I got his book right here, just like always, as I'm always trying to do. Let me make this bigger real quick so I can show you. I always have tabs for every book that I've read. I've talk about that all the time. Every single book that I've read has probably more tabs than it has pages, but a lot of the times I have to cut it down some just because of, I got to be in the realm of respect, and also I can't be copywriting, or it's copywriting and stuff like that, but I can talk about it as an aspect of educational and what I've learned, so that's what I try to do. um the one thing that I got to say about Zachariah Sitchin is that when he first wrote his book, The 12th Planet, in 1976, I was definitely somebody who believed what he said. I'm an 80s baby. I didn't start reading his books until much later, but of course, because of my uh, interest in aliens and extraterrestrials and all this other stuff, outside of what academia said, I had to find somebody who was respected in the field as far as when it comes to, the extraterrestrials and aliens, and a lot of people geared towards Zachariah Sitchin. I'm not a big fan of his information as being accurate, but I am a fan of somebody who will say that I've researched his material. I'm not like some people who will read his material and go on and say, hey, this is the gospel, this is the truth, this is what the facts are. No, that's not what I do. What I like to do is read the information for myself, do my due diligence, and I try to figure out why they said what they said. A lot of times, a lot of people like Billy Carson, when you ask them questions, they'll go tell you to read a book. I actually met Billy Carson at Cosmic Summit and asked him a question. He says, go read the Bible. Telling me that is like the most disrespectful thing, but he don't know who I am, but I definitely know who he is. And I can tell you that interpretation and understanding and comprehension plays a major part in this, and that's why I try to ask all these questions and try to get to the bottom of why these people understood what they believe. So let's go to the next slide real quick, because I didn't make that many slides. What I want to do from now on is I do want to make sure that I have a picture and some type of slides to represent what book that I'm reading. And the reason why is because a lot of people are visual. I don't know why I'm visual. I'm a visual learner, but I'm also able to, comprehend what I hear and read and so on and so forth. So with the respects towards Zachariah Sitchin, in the back of his book, it says special large format edition, lavishly illustrated with maps, diagrams, and photographs. Okay. Under this book, it is titled, not titled, but in the field of ancient mysteries in archaeology. Ancient mysteries in archaeology. Okay. So what I'm learned about the Zachariah Sitchin is he does take a lot of stuff from academia and he interprets it his way, comprehends it his way, and then he brings and carries his own narrative into what he understands. I don't know if he had a narrative to monetize, make money off of it, or if he was actually trying to teach people stuff. I can tell you that Dr. Michael S. Heiser once asked and challenged Zachariah Sitchin on some of the stuff he said, and to no avail. They never had a conversation. To me personally, if you challenge me, I'm definitely going to come up to that plate and be challenged, and I'm going to go back and forth with you on it. Why? Because you can't challenge me and not me respond. I have to respond. The reason why I have to respond is because for one thing and one thing only, I know what I'm talking about. So I don't have to shy away and be scared about what I have to present to the table. I love having interactions with people, and I love showing people where I got my information from. And I can tell you personally, the amount of information that I know, and since a lot of people have been following me for a while, uh, I can tell you I'm bringing books to the table. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go do your own research. I'm not going to tell you to go, go read this. I'm going to tell you, hey, I read this. This is where I got it from. If you want to match my energy, do the same exact thing that I did, and let's have another conversation. Until then, I know what I said, I know what I've read, and I know what I know. Now it's up to you to sit here and determine what you know. But on the back of the book, it says when the Spanish conquistadors came to the New World in search of El Dorado, the fabled city of gold, they instead found stone edifices of massive proportions, mysteriously constructed in inaccessible regions. Huge monuments built with a skill level and tools yet unknown to the indigenous cultures of that part of the world. No, let's take that back. Right there is an indication that this person who wrote this blurb and the people who understand what Zachariah Sitchin says, they're incorrect. Okay. First of all, built with a skill level and tools yet unknown to the indigenous people. No, yet unknown to the Europeans that went there. Okay. Maybe they knew in their country that they had this type of information and knowledge, but they didn't think that other people had it because guess what? They probably were like on this God-like concept. So that right there struck me with curiosity as I got older and I realized words are important. You can't sit here and tell me yet unknown to an indigenous group of people when they have it there. Okay, because now when people went from America or the Americas and went to Europe, they probably thought the same thing about those people. Oh, they know the same thing we do. Come on, let's just be honest. That right there should be struck out. That's a horrible way to explain a book because obviously these individuals knew it. Now, whether you think they knew it because of extraterrestrials or whatever, they still knew the information. They knew how they had the knowledge to create what they needed. So that right there, that guy right there, throw him out the water. In the Lost Realm, Zachariah Sitchin combines archaeological, mythological, and textual evidence to uncover links between ancient Near Eastern and prehistoric American civilizations, links that explain the pyramids and the cities of gods in Mexico, the Mayan mastery of astronomy, the secrets of the Olmec calendar, and the presence of the oldest metropolis in the Americas on the shores of Lake Titicaca. He discloses answers to the puzzles of the ancient American civilizations, answers that strongly suggest the involvement of gods from another planet who made Earth their home. That right there, I've talked about it plenty of times. I'm going to keep talking about it because I'm going to go over a lot of Zachariah Sitchin's book. But there is no planet Nibiru that orbits our sun every 3,600 years. Okay. When you go to the actual text and you read that stuff, and I've went over and I harped on it plenty of times, knowing that Enki was a fish god, that he was a water god, and this, that, and the third, and you have fish gods and water gods throughout the whole civilizations around the world. Obviously it's saying that these individuals came from the water. Now, Zachariah Sitchin says many times when the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru, they landed in the water like they did, like the astronauts do of today, and they came from the water and went on shores. Now, I'm just going to tell you that for the sake of honesty, there is no cuneiform tablet out there that says that the Anunnaki came from a planet Nibiru. There is no tablet out there that sits there and indicates that the Anunnaki came from a planet outside of our atmosphere that orbits our sun every 3,600 years. Okay. Zachariah Sitchin says that, he harps on it, but he doesn't bring no real evidence on it. He says the Sumerians said it. Guess what? The Sumerians didn't say that. He likes the whole cylinder seal VA 243. He says the Sumerians. Billy Carson says Sumerians. That cylinder seal VA 243 is not Sumerian. First of all, okay, it's Akkadian. It comes from a different culture, a different group of people. Okay, so the Sumerians did not talk about that. That's just facts. That's honest. Go look up cylinder seal VA 243, VA 243, and you'll see for yourself that is not Sumerian. It's actually Akkadian. All right, a dazzling performance. Sitchin is a zealous investigator. Okay, come on, man. Anybody can be a zealous investigator. So that quote right there, I threw that out the water. Sitchin's pursuit of the earliest available texts and artifacts make possible the wealth of photos and line drawings included in his books, from tablets, monuments, murals, pottery, seals, etc., used generously throughout. They provide vital visual evidence. Now, first of all, let me tell you this, and I said this plenty of times. If me and 50 different people go to the museum right now, we're looking at fine art, we're going to have different ideas of what that art means to us. Now, there'll be a basic understanding what that art represents, and we're going to know what it sees on a basic level, but when it comes into interpretation, comprehension, and understanding of that art, we're all going to have different ideas, right? So him saying one thing, showing people another thing, it's up to your understanding and interpretation of what you want to do. So that's basically that for that part, as far as PowerPoint slides. So what I'm going to do from now on, because I'm slowly, going to start promoting my stuff more often and only, doing my presenting my stuff more often on my work of what I did instead of being in groups of other people and stuff like that. I'm going to be doing this more often, 2, 3, 4 times a week. I don't know how many times. It's going to be at least twice a week. Throw up a quick old PowerPoint slide real quick, and then I can go ahead and talk about the book because most of my stuff is going to come from the book anyway. So we're going to go ahead and start um, with the first tab. Like I said, every book that I have has plenty of tabs on them. Okay, this is not me trying to sit here and say, "Hey, look, I'm right. This is the information. This is facts. He's wrong. This, that, and third." I'm just telling you what I've learned, what I've researched, and what I gained throughout my readings of his books. So there's no misunderstanding. There's no, you know. Uh, me saying, hey, I'm right because of this, that, and third. I'm just going to tell you more information based off of what I've read and what tabs caught my eye and, what I wanted to do more research on. So for the first tab, I got right here. They never used it as commodity, as money. To the Spaniards, gold was a means to acquire whatever their hearts desired. Flush with gold, but short of homegrown luxuries or even daily necessities, the Spaniards were soon paying 60 golden pesos for a bottle of wine, 100 for a cloak, and 10,000 for a horse. Now, this is very interesting to me. Let me do something real. All right. Just wanted to make sure I have this correct. Okay, so look, check this out. Yes, they didn't use gold for selling stuff. They didn't use gold for a type of money or anything like that. They just basically, in their own ways, they gold was like a fashion statement for a lot of people, depending on the things. They did have trade, so they did trade gold between different indigenous groups, just depending on the time period and stuff like that. But he also says he says, but back in Europe, the inflow of gold, silver, and precious stones raised the gold fever, encouraged more speculation about El Dorado. And that's true. There's a lot of people that was trying to look for El Dorado. There was a lot of people that was trying to get information. There was a lot of people that was trying to understand where these massive gold things were. I can say from my personal experience and what I've read, gold has always been a thing, but that was only towards Europeans that went search for it. But it's not like they went to go search for it. That was the first thing they was looking to search. I can tell you, a lot of people were looking for different things. Some people were looking for the fountain of youth. Some people were looking for gold. Some people were looking for silver. It was just different for different things. All right, so let's go to the next tab. It says the Aztecs literally poured their gold at the Spaniards' feet, believing that they represented the returning deity. The Incas, who at first also saw in the arriving Spaniards the fulfillment of their deity's promise to return from across the seas, later could not understand why the Spaniards had come so far and behaved so ill for a metal for which man had no practical use. When they say man that has no practical use, different indigenous groups from the Americas had different usage for different things. Some used gold, some used silver, some used copper, some used, tin. It was just different things, and you can make tin, using different type of metals, of course. But saying that no use to man, I mean, we could see right now that gold is used for man for a lot of stuff. Um, that right there is a narrative that he tried to create because nobody knows exactly why different people use gold for different things. We have a basic understanding from their oral traditional stories, but those oral traditional stories were combined with added on by other stories from around the world. All right, so just to keep it simple and stupid, because that's what I like to do, is keep it simple, stupid. That's why I tell people, for me, when you tell me something, just keep it simple, stupid. Gold had a different usage for different people, different groups. It wasn't just like, one group of individuals is like, hey, look, we're using gold for this or we're not using gold for that, whatever the case may be. This is what he also says, and this is interesting. He says, expert studies as that by Amelia Hertz have concluded that Aztec picture writing in AD 1500 was similar to the earliest Egyptian writing as that on the stone tablet of King Narmer, who some consider to have been the first dynastic king in Egypt, 4.5 millennia earlier. That's just hieroglyphs. Early writing system. I always talked about this. Look, check it. The first writing system came from the Sumerians. That's what academia says because of their writing system. And because their writing system started as a pictographic script, that's just the basic thing is to keep it simple, stupid is emojis. Okay. Emojis, like I can have a whole conversation with somebody just using emojis today. It's just they just have to have the basic understanding of what that emoji means to them. And I give you a good example. Remember when I was talking about the whole thing when we go to the museum and we interpret things differently? There are individuals who use emojis, to talk share what they're feeling. And I give you a good example, the praying hands. Some people will interpret that as clapping. So I've read plenty of times where people said you have these little memes and these little pictures and stuff like that. Someone passed away, right? And somebody does the praying hands, but the other person that actually receives it doesn't interpret it as praying hands. They're interpreting it as clapping. Well, what is clapping? Well, clapping can be mean for different things, but it's applause for something. Some people are gonna be like, okay, why are you clapping that my family member died? And that person would say, hey, I didn't mean it clapping. I'm talking, these are praying hands. And that's when people start understanding the different ideas and the interpretations of what they're doing. But as far as this part that he says about Egyptian writing system and the hieroglyphs in the Mesoamerica and stuff like that. Yes, it was similar. The Chinese has similar pictographic script. A lot of people. There's actually a book that I'll be going over in the future that the Sumerians and Egyptian Chinese writing system is somewhat similar in many ways. So, but the idea is that when it comes to writing systems, every civilization around the world started off with a pictographic type of writing system, pictures to identify what their stories were trying to tell. Just like I said earlier, it's all about interpretation, understanding, and comprehension of what you're trying to, convey in those pictographic scripts. Here's another thing that he says in the book. He says, "We find the creator of all things." I'm gonna say that again. We find the creator of all things to continue the comparisons to have been a God who gives life, death, good, and evil fortune. The chronicler Antonio de Herrera y Tordesillas wrote that the Indians called to him in their tribulations, gazing toward the sky where they believe him to be. Now, that's not necessarily true, and I can tell you why. Matter of fact, it's funny. I'm still reading this Oxford Handbook of American Indian history. Now, this is American, of course, but it's indigenous, is Native Americans, and so on and so forth. But the idea that these gods came from the skies is not necessarily they came from the skies. A lot of these cultures would look to the sky and put what they think as gods as a constellation of some sort, like Venus, for instance. Venus was known as Ishtar. Some people will also say that's Mary of Magdalene or the Virgin Mary, just depending on who you're talking to. But the point is that Venus was Ishtar, Inanna, and the Virgin Mary. And these individuals were known as the Queen of Heaven, where they had to have a constellation to represent the astral perspective of these individuals. So you have the human-like body individuals, and then you have a constellation that's represented. That's no different than the Greeks and the Romans, Mars, for instance, right? So he says right here where they believe him to be. A lot of people, matter of fact, a lot of indigenous religions when they started, or some people will call them religions, didn't believe that a god came from outside of Earth's atmosphere. Some of them didn't even believe in a god at all. That happened later on during time and stuff like that. So using that right there and telling people that right there is just saying, hey, look, I'm using this point as these guys came from outside of Earth's atmosphere, and that's incorrect. Here we go. This is a good Chris got to get his book. I had a discussion with him. You can find it on the YouTube. Sky Gods equals Sky Brothers of, I don't know how to say that, but that's right there. Hey Chris, real quick, can you tell me put in typing in the comments the ideas of some of these, because you're Native American, what the beliefs of these gods and ideas of them coming from outside of Earth's atmosphere, if you don't mind. And this guy's very knowledgeable. I promote his work a lot. If you want to find him, the Kohari, I probably said that incorrectly. He could put it in and I'll throw it on the comments. Guy's awesome with his information, got his book, and we'll be going over his book in the future. Exactly. And I actually read that in this book right here about that. They talk a lot about that, Chris. So that's very interesting. You brought that up. And in this book in particular, it does say that the religions or the ideas, they didn't think these gods came from outside of Earth's atmosphere. So when somebody says sky gods, I think of it like this. I break it down. Planet Nibiru. A lot of people believe in Planet Nibiru, but there's actually a place in Mesopotamia that says that has a city called Nibru, Nibru, and it's also known as Nipper. And every god or type of gods or kings or whatever you want to call them, people who were in charge, they had sat on top of mountains higher than the individuals below, meaning that it was harder to get to them. They were like Mount Olympus is a great example of that. These individuals were on top of the mountains, and they would send their messengers from the top down to the group of people, and that's where, from the top of the ziggurats, the pyramid, not the pyramids as in Egypt per se, but they have steps up in the pyramids in Mesoamerica and stuff like that. Um, there were the Kahari tribe of the Eastern Siawan. I could probably mess that up and butcher it, but don't worry. I'm gonna get Chris on here. We're gonna talk about his book. Like I said, I'm gonna read his book and we'll go more in depth in it. So, as I really appreciate him being here because he's an individual that I do look up to when it comes to this type of things. But when Zachariah Sitchin said, "When we find the creator of all things," every civilization around the United States, Mesoamerica, the Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Americas, Canada, name it, Russia, China, it doesn't matter. There's a creator God in all those places. And that's just, I mean, that just comes with, common sense, where did we come from? Why are we here type questions. Who's greater than us and so on and so forth. So of course there's going to be a creator of all things. Matter of fact, in ancient Egypt you got Ta, you got Knum, Knum. He's actually the god that was responsible for creating humans from pottery wheel, right? So it's just different ideas. Another thing that Zachariah Sitchin says, he says the fourth sun was the era of the black-headed people. It was during that era that Quetzalcoatl appeared in Mexico, tall of stature, bright of countenance, bearded and wearing a long tunic. His staff, shaped like a serpent, was painted black, white, and red. It was inlaid with precious stones and adorned with 6 stars. Not by coincidence, perhaps the staff of Bishop Zumarraga and the Bishop of Mexico was fashioned to look like the staff of Quetzalcoatl. It was during this era that Tolon, the Toltec capital, was built. Quetzalcoatl, master of wisdom, knowledge, introduced learning, crafts, laws, time reckoning according to the 52 year circle. Now that's actually um, I did more research on that. Like I said, there's a lot of tabs that I try to go into, and that's accurate. But I can tell you, Quetzalcoatl was also known as Ningazida, which is Sumerian. He was a god from the Nuna slash the Anunnaki, and he's also known as Thoth, right? And Hermes. So or at least that's the description, understandings, and the similarities between the individuals. Nobody knows for a fact that all those individuals are actually related or one person or whatnot, but the similarities are very close. And some people believe that all of them are the same. That, like I said, Hermes, um, Quetzalcoatl, Thoth, and so on. So yeah, so here's another thing. Why were the eras called suns and how long did they last? The reason is unclear, and the length of the various eras is either unstated or differs according to the version. Now, I highlighted that and put that as a tab because just because one civilization talked about something doesn't mean that everybody agreed with it. Let me give you a good example of that. Uh, Christianity. Right now, I can pick up the New International Version right there, or pull out my book. Hold on. The New Jerusalem Bible, which is one of my favorites, the New Jerusalem Bible. Uh, I can get the new, like I said, I can get the New International Version. I can get the Jerusalem Bible. I can get the King James Version, and they will all have something different. Hold on, let me take this thing off my book real quick. All right. So Here, let me read what Chris said real quick. In Canada, I can't say that correctly. Cree believed that the grandmother Earth fell from the sky and a group of swans, cranes formed a circle around her and gently brought her down to land. I actually read that in here too. But what about the turtles, Chris? Can you give like Turtle Island? Can you give us some information about Turtle Island? I appreciate that. That's good information because that's accurate. That's why a lot of people believe that these guys came from outside of Earth's atmosphere. And that's why they were extraterrestrials. But I can tell you, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, did these individuals believe that there was a planet that orbited our sun every 3,600 years? I haven't read anything like that, but I'm not finished with this book yet. But like I said, I can pick up different Bibles, the Hebrew Bible, the Septuagint, and so on and so forth, and it will say different things. I give you a good example. The King James Version would say that Goliath was 6 cubits in the span. Well, I have a Septuagint with the Apocrypha, and guess what it says? He wasn't 6 cubits in the span, that he was 4 cubits in the span, meaning that he was much shorter, but he was considered a giant, right? So just picking up different books and stuff like that, you're going to have different sayings and understanding. If a Christian picked up if I was Christian or if I believed in any monotheistic religion, if I picked up the King James Version, first, and I was taught the whole time that that Goliath was 6 cubits in the span, and somebody came behind me and said, well, hey, guess what? There's text that actually says that he was actually shorter and it was 4 cubits in span. It's up to me to sit here and say, well, okay, now I got to update my information, or I can sit here and be ignorant and just say, no, I don't care. I'm just going to stick with the 6 cubits in span. The next thing, Zechariah Sitchin says in his book, he says, some scholars suggest that Nahata texts reflect in some way that the Indians had already heard from the Bible spotting Spaniards, but since not all codicises are post-conquest, the biblical Mesopotamia similarities can only be explained by admitting that the Mexican tribes had some ancestral ties to Mesopotamia. Now, I don't know about you, but Mesopotamia is right here. You got Africa right here, and you have let me just put it like this: to travel from Mesopotamia to get through to the other side of the world, to Mexico and all this other stuff that Zechariah Sitchin says, let's just be honest, it's more plausible that they possibly came from Africa or Spain, right? In Europe, matter of fact, because it's easier, right? But I don't know why he said that. I'm just telling you that. Why does it have to be Mesopotamia? Okay, why? Why does it have to be it? And that's a question that I would love to have asked him, but he doesn't really explain why. He just says because the similarities. Well, you can find the same similarities in Mesopotamia that you can find, not just Mesopotamia, but just in that area, like Göbekli Tepe, for example, has a lot of similarities with the Aboriginal Australians, with same types of, pictographic script and stuff like that. And guess what? The Aboriginal Australians go back 50, 60,000 years. Okay. The Sumerian civilization started what, 5,000 years ago, give or take, maybe, right? 3,200 BC. That Dr. Neely Simon says from Bar-Ilan University. So it's just, why does it have to be Mesopotamia? Why did you pick that? If the Sumerians are not the first individuals with the oldest pictographic script, why did you pick them as the people? And it's just because he has a narrative created and people believe it, and that's fine. But you're taking away from the Aboriginal Australians that go back 50, 60,000 years that has some type of relationship with Göbekli Tepe. And I'm not saying that they were there or anything like that, but it's just the similarities. Chris says that Cherokee and Hopi knew that our world was round, not flat. Unsure if they knew about other worlds. I know the doggone tribe of Africa, Mali, knew about the stars and worlds. That's actually correct. I've actually read that so many different times. I can't even argue with that. Matter of fact, the Sumerians didn't even think that the earth was flat or round. What the Sumerians thought, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, is they thought that we were under a dome. A lot of people don't talk about that, right? I don't hear too much people talking about that. I've read it in books, of course, and stuff like that. But when it comes to social media, trying to share information and everything, everybody either goes one or two ways. They go flat earth or the earth was round. But the Sumerians actually thought we lived under a dome. That's just facts. Samuel Noah Kramer talks about it in his books. I've went over it already. I don't have to sit there and harp on it. It's on my other book. If you want to see it, it's one of the shows that I did about Samuel Noah Kramer's books in the past. And so you can either check the live or you can check the ones that I had pre-recorded or you know, forgot to not do it live and stuff like that. But it's on my YouTube for a fact. Another thing that Zachariah Sitchin says is, but that according to the Sumerians, he says themselves was, hold on for a second. Let me get this. Because I have to change the page at the same time. Hold on. All right. Let's see. But that, according to the Sumerians themselves, was the course of events that after the deluge, there have been, they stated and restated, a high civilization upon earth before the deluge. Now, this is interesting to me. In this book right here that Zachariah Sitchin wrote, what I've learned from reading this book, The Lost Realms, the fourth book of the Earth Chronicles, he says this. And it's interesting to me because of the simple fact that when you actually learn about the deluge, there's a lot of individuals that talk about how can I say it, six destructions on earth, or six different types of creations on earth. So a lot of people will read the Bible and say that God created earth in 6 days. There's been plenty of cataclysms that happen on earth, and it's just interesting that a lot of people don't understand this and realize the fact that we know that um, every civilization around the world started by some type of body of water, right? This is not me saying it. This is not me trying to come up with, an argument or anything like that. But we definitely know that every civilization started by a body of water, some sort, right? It only makes sense for that to happen. Why? Because of the simple fact that we need water to survive. I've already talked about this plenty of times. Eventually, sometime that water is going to flood, whether it's a pond, lake, or a river. It's going to flood. It's going to cause people to move. It's going to destroy things, and people are going to have to start all over again. That's just facts. I don't have to argue that. That's just facts, right? I mean, floods happen till this day, right? So they ain't never stopped, right? So the idea that uh, that has been said and restated, that's facts. I don't have to argue with Zachariah Sitchin about that. Let's see. There's the dome, the firmament of the Torah of the Bible. Now that's something I'm gonna get in the future. I actually have an 1873 Bible that talks about flat Earth. I also have another Bible. It's not 1873, but it's another Bible that that's a little newer, Geneva version, I think it is. I'm not sure about it, but it talks about round. It just depends on the interpretation. Everybody has their own interpretations. What is really flat Earth? Okay, if I take this book right now, let me make this very simple for you, for everybody. Hold on, let me make this larger. I take this book right now, and you look at it. It's flat, right? But eventually, when you get to the corner, it's going to round out and you're going to go to the other side. What do you consider a flat earth, right? That's what has to be, what criteria is needed for you to say, hey, this is a flat earth, right? Because a lot of people say there's no corners, there's no rounding and nothing like that. On some parts, the people that let me just put this up again. The people that live on the edge right here, they're going to say, oh yeah, that's round because we could tell by the way the sun, moon, and stars and move like that. But the people that's on this side, they're going to say it's flat because the sun, moon, and stars move a certain way. It just depends on where you're at on earth. But there's going to be an argument. I have a book that actually is a great indicator of how a lot of people come up with the idea of flat earth, and they use the Bible for it. I'll be going over it in the future. I have books for everything. So like I said, and there's a lot of tabs on this one. I think this book was like 900 and some odd pages, close to 1,000 or something like that. So in the future, you're gonna hear that. Just keep following me. And I'm like I said, I'm gonna do these more often so that way I can get through I have a lot of books. I have a lot of books. I have a lot of hardcover books, and I have a lot of books on my Kindle. So I this is something that I love doing. I'm keep sharing what I did. So Chris, it just depends. When you say firmament, it does talk about firmament in the Bible and stuff like that. Different texts and stuff like that. Apocrypha says different things. You have the Book of Enoch. You have there's another book. I can't remember the name of it. The Coburn Bible. Matter of fact, I just had a request about somebody to ask. They asked me if I could talk about the Coburn Bible. Well, I do have a Coburn Bible. I have it on my Kindle, and I was actually supposed to do this with another individual, but that individual, me and that person don't talk anymore. because of the lack of their dedication to sharing knowledge, and they just didn't want to do it. We're supposed to do this like 2 years ago, so I'm actually going to do it because I was requested to do what I've learned from reading this book on the Coburn Bible. So that's going to be one of the books I do in the future. So yeah, I'm probably going to do that probably in the next couple of weeks, probably sometime in November, December. All right, here's another thing that Zachariah Sitchin talks. He says of three pyramids at Teotihuacan, the smallest is Quetzalcoatl Pyramid and Citadel. A later addition was partly excavated to reveal the original step pyramid. The partly exposed facade reveals sculpted decorations in which the serpent symbol of Quetzalcoatl alternates with a stylized face of Taluk and against a background of wavy waters. Wavy waters. Now, I've always talked about this. In the Oxford Handbook of Cuneiform Culture, a book that I have, which I'll be doing on the future, it actually says in there that the Anuna / the Anunnaki came from the seas, the depths of the seas. That's why they say, that's why Enki is represented or depicted as a fish god or a water god. Whenever you see water coming out, the shoulders of in Mesoamerica, usually 9 times out of 10, that's Enki. And it's because he was a fish god / water god. I like to say water / fish god / water god because he was depicted in a fish suit, but he was also known as a water god. But the wavy waters part is interesting to me because a lot of people say, well, Quetzalcoatl came from across the seas, right? That's what individuals say. And it was because the way he was dressed and so on and so forth. Well, Mansa Musa had dressed in certain ways too, but of course that's not the time period and stuff like that. But I'm just saying that the style that everybody dressed and even today, matter of fact, if you go to Afghanistan and Iraq right now, those people still dress in that same type of attire. It hasn't changed much. So and I know that because I've been there. So the idea that these individuals looked a certain way and they were depicted as one way, some people will interpret that they were still the same. The two later pyramids, by contrast, are totally undecorated. They are of a different size and shape and stand out in their massiveness and in antiquity. In all these aspects, they resemble the two great pyramids of Giza, which likewise differ on all these accounts from all the other subsequent Egyptian pyramids. The latter were built by pharaohs, whereas the unique ones at Giza were built by the gods. That's what he says in quotes, right? Perhaps that is also what had happened in Teotihuacan. Now, this is interesting to me. Pharaohs and gods were one and the same. When individuals looked at a pharaoh, they usually 9 times out of 10 called them a god, right? Even in today's standard, in North Korea, you go over there, their god is going, their king, their president, their whatever you want to call them is known as a god. And literally, it's not me saying that. King Jong-il is what I learned this from, that he was represented as a god, and his son and all these. It's just, let me just keep it simple. A king was known as a god, basically. That's why they were represented as some individual with godlike abilities. Let's see. The next thing he says: those who assume that Teotihuacan is no older than a few centuries BC have a simple answer. The Toltecs, those who now lean toward a much earlier beginning, have started to point to the Olmecs, an enigmatic people who emerged to the Mesoamerican scene in the middle of the 2nd millennium BC. Now, there's not that much information on the Olmecs. They had their own depictions. The Olmec heads and so on and so forth. So the idea that they came around 2000 BC, that's actually still up in the air. And that's still up in the air because nobody really understands where they came from. There's no writing system. There's no actual, artifacts that actually can say, hey, this is the time period that they came from. There's no bones and so on and so forth that actually can say this is the time frame. But we do know that the Olmecs are considered, the first civilization in Mesoamerica. But then I always say this: what is the criteria needed to be considered a civilization, right? Some people would say writing system. Some people would say Dr. Margaret Mead actually says that, and this is not, a factual statement as far as somebody has it recorded or, that's in where you can go see it, that she said this, but she had some kind of discussion, a seminar, or something with a group of individuals, and she said in there that she believes the civilization started because of healing of a femur. She was able to recognize a femur bone being healed, and that somebody took time out of their life to help that person survive, and that's why she believes this is a sign of civilization, which could go back anywhere, to 15,000 years ago. But this is the thing. Humans aren't the only individuals that look out for injured animals because we're considered an animal species, of course. Other animals look out for species that hurt. The only thing is that the animal that is hurt can cause a lot of problems for the person or individual that or other animal that's helping them because of predators and stuff like that. Can't move, can't do this and that and third. But it's not just humans that would take care of an injured uh, you know individual or animal, right? Here's another thing that he says. It is our belief. Now, this is what this is what I like. It is our belief. Who is our? Because from what I understand, you wrote this book, Zachariah Sitchin, and I don't see nobody but one name on this book, right? But he says, it is our belief that it was the same Thoth, Elias Quetzalcoatl, who had bestowed the calendar of 52 and all knowledge upon the peoples of Mesoamerica. In Yucatan, the Maya called him Kukulkan. In the Pacific regions of Guatemala and El Salvador, he was, and I can never say this name right, but it starts with an X, and the names all meant the same feathered or winged serpent, which is accurate. But that doesn't mean that they were the same individual. Linguistically, you have to be able to prove that. How can you prove that linguistically? Nobody has ever actually been able to do that. They just say that these individuals are the same because of the pictographic script and the depictions of these individuals. Now, the depictions are sometimes what we understand as a pictographic script, which is interesting, right? It is no wonder that Eric von Daniken, who has popularized the theory of ancient astronauts, wrote about his visit to the site in 1980. And it says that neither Mother Nature nor the Incas, but only ancient astronauts could have been responsible for these monumental structures. Now, I've read Eric von Daniken's. I actually have it. I'll be going over it in the future. When Eric von Daniken wrote Chariots of the Gods, he was asking questions, okay? Because a lot of people were saying, well, where did these individuals came from? And his interpretation and understanding was that they had to be some kind of gods. He used the Ezekiel wheel in his idea, and I can tell you right now, when you go read the Bible about the Ezekiel wheel, it was through a vision. It wasn't something that he seen. He looked up in the sky in his eyes and he said, "Oh, look, there's an Ezekiel wheel." No, it wasn't like that. It was in a vision, meaning that he was meditating or he's in trance-like state, meditative state. That's how he's seen the Ezekiel's wheel. This is no different than some of the most famous inventors out there, like Nikola Tesla, who would tell individuals or who have said that people have said that Nikola Tesla said it and they wrote it down, that he would go to sleep in a meditative state, and he was able to come up with his inventions in his meditative type state. This is no different than that, right? So in all reality, and then a lot of people would say, well, NASA took the idea of Ezekiel's will from the Bible and said, how do we do this? Let me put it like this. A wheel inside of a wheel is not something hard to think about. I mean, they wrote it in the Bible. Well, what was a wheel inside of a wheel? Well, guess what? The first wheel ever created wasn't because they was using it for transportation. Guess what it was used for? Pottery. The wheel was created because of pottery, the pottery wheel, literally. I'm not saying that there wasn't pottery before that, because we have, the Japanese, they're indigenous people. They have, pottery. There's pottery found in Mali in Africa and pottery found in Mesoamerica before the Sumerians. The thing is that it made pottery easier to mold with the pottery wheel. You didn't have, if you ever messed with pottery and you use the pottery wheel, then you understand that how easier it is to create these vases, these cups, these plates, and so on and so forth. So it's not really hard to understand that. But the idea that Samuel Noah Kramer, he does say that the Sumerians in so many ways were the inventors of pottery, which is not correct, because we have older pottery before that. But it's a type of pottery, type of brick, a type of things that they use. It was always an invention that improved the invention before. I'll give you a perfect example of that. When people were walking and they needed to travel distances, guess what they started doing? They started riding animals, horses, so on and so forth. Those horses were then turned into using chariots where the horses will pull the chariots. But guess what? Somebody said, hey, well, the horses die in the middle of the road. How can we create something that doesn't use a horse? Well, guess when automobiles came into play, right? And now we're at the point where we're flying and so on and so forth. So it's just an invention is always improving. It's bettering our lives because of trade and so on and so forth, right? Here's another thing that Zechariah Sitchin says. It is no wonder that I already read that. I forgot. But yeah, that book right there is actually a good book. If you want to understand what Zechariah Sitchin was saying about Eric von Däniken, Eric von Däniken did bring up the fascination of ancient astronauts. I don't believe in the ancient astronauts. I think two things can be right at the same time. I believe in extraterrestrials, UFOs, and so on and so forth. But the Anuna/Anunnaki, I don't believe they were one of them. Maybe a different group of species came from somewhere, and people are putting it as one and the same, but there's no proof of that right now. Let's say that in the reign of the 58th monarch, when the fourth sun was completed, the count was 2,900 years since the deluge. It was Montesinos calculated the year in which Jesus Christ was born. Nobody knows exactly when Jesus Christ was born. I actually did a live or I did a live, and it's on my YouTube. It may not be under the live section of my YouTube channel, but no, matter of fact, it's not under the live section. It's in the video section. I did a video on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Dead Sea Scrolls from Penguin Classics, which is a very respected and reputable source for a lot of things, talks about the birth of Jesus Christ. And it's actually within like the first 5 minutes, because it's like the first or second page of the book. And I already did that. So if you want to know when Jesus Christ was born or when he was possibly born, I believe it said 6 BC, if I'm not mistaken, or I'm not sure exactly when, but just go in there and look at it, and it's in there. Next tab, he says the principal reason for believing that Machu Picchu is a land. Hold on for a second. Oh man, hold on for a second. Let me do this real quick. And grab this real quick. All right. I'm back. Let's see. The principle for believing that Machu Picchu is the legendary Tampu Toko is the clue of the 3 windows. All right. Now this is interesting. You can find 3 windows everywhere. Matter of fact, what's that painting? The Last Supper with Jesus Christ and his disciples and stuff like that. They have 3 windows in the back. 3 is a very, very popular number in a lot of things. It can range in the belief of some kind of how can I explain it? Matter of fact, the easiest way that I can explain the 3 windows is just like a very prominent number for some type of God or some type of windows into truth and knowledge. There's different ways, Masonics, Masons to believe in different things. I'll actually be going what Albert Pike goes into about it in the future. So like I said, each book is on there, but when it comes to 3 windows, you can find that anywhere in civilizations, and it means different things for different places. They have basic understanding for different ones, of course, but I can tell you for a fact it meant different things for different places. Here we go. Another thing he says, according to Montesinos and other chroniclers, the most unusual event took place in the reign of Titu Upakayu. I won't be able to say this correctly, but it's basically the 15th monarch in ancient empire times. It was in the 3rd year of his reign, when good customs were forgotten and people were given to all manner of vice, that there was no dawn for 20 hours. In other words, the night did not end when it usually does. The sunrise delayed for 20 hours. Now, I've read that many times. How can that be proven? I don't know. There's I'm gonna just tell you right now, when I researched that right there is said into a lot of things about what is believed. He says right here, and I'll go forth. He says this could not have been an eclipse. It was not that the shining sun was obscured by a shadow. Besides, no eclipse lasts so long, and the Peruvians were cognizant of such periodic events. The tale does not say that the sun disappeared. It says that it did not rise. There was no dawn for 20 hours. Now, we don't know if an eclipse can last that long. We don't know. We don't know what it actually was at all, right? That hasn't happened in this time period. But what I can say is that something blocked out the sun or something. And then, matter of fact, on the other side of the world, they said that the sun was up for 20 something hours, 24 hours. But I got to see exactly text that actually says that. And I wasn't able to find that. And I wanted to understand what it actually meant and what it said and what each word meant differently based on what they picked for their narrative, meaning that one word could mean 50 different things, and I wanted to know each one of the words. So that's why I said I try to find a text for it, and I wasn't successful. And he doesn't provide the actual text or sources for where he gets it. He says these individuals said it, but he doesn't give you a text where you can read it for yourself. And I'm that type of person where I have to read it for myself, and I have to see it with my eyes first because I wanted to understand exactly what it is they was talking about. I believe what somebody else says, but you know, you have to show me where you got this information from, and that's just the bottom line for it. All right, let's see. Next tab. The next tab says one ought to read and reread the Psalmist verses to realize that the observation of the wonders of the celestial phenomena had nothing to do with tilling the land or herding the cattle. Now I'm gonna tell you that's bullshit. And I hate to say it like that. Every observation had to do with some type of agricultural need. I could tell you that from the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades. For example, the Seven Sister Pleiades is usually some type of indicator of agricultural starting. Let me read what else he says. He says, okay, let me just read the whole thing. It says, one ought to read and reread the psalmist verses to realize that the observation of the wonders of celestial phenomena had nothing to do with the tilling the land or herding the cattle. It had to do with the veneration of the Lord of all. When you read the Hebrew Bible for the first time and understand that Aleph, the cow or the bull, or whatever the case, was used as tilling, and it was definitely an indication of agricultural needs. This is not me saying that. This is actual facts. When we started doing agricultural needs, as you know, as archaic individuals, we had to look at the sun to understand when the time was needed to start our agricultural needs. This is throughout the whole world. Farmers still do this today. So when they say the Lord of all, guess what? The Lord of all in ancient Hebrew was Aleph, Aleph, which also was depicted as a bull or an ox or a cow of some sort, right? And these were used to till the earth. And guess what? These were individuals these animals were depicted as some type of God. This is literally what it was. Why? Because it was a strong leader. Look at Aleph, look up the bull, look up the ox, the cow, and all this other stuff. They were known as gods. Matter of fact, across the waters in India, they still look at cows as gods in certain ways. In some places, some countries in Africa, they look at cows and oxes and bulls and stuff like that as gods. This hasn't changed. This is still out there. It's just what it is. When he said that, I couldn't believe he said that, because this is basic knowledge, and especially since he says that he understands ancient Hebrew, this is something that I can't believe that he said. It's so wrong to the point where he's saying that Lord of all in quotation marks. Well, guess what? These ox, these bulls, these cows, they were known as gods. But that's when I say that individuals would take things and they would tell you that they basically telling you that they're trying to create a new narrative. This is no different in a lot of things. But look up Aleph, and you'll see exactly what I'm understanding. I've already did some discussions about books on ancient Hebrew that I got from Jeff Benner, who's a respected individual out there in the Hebrew scholar world, and you can look up it for yourself. It's out there. So I already have that information presented out there and stuff like that. Let's go to the next page. All right, let's see. Let's see. The astronomy combined with archaeology can help date monuments, explain historical events, and define the celestial origins of religious beliefs. Has been recognized fully only in recent years. It took almost a century for the realization to reach the level of discipline called archaeoastronomy, for it was in 1984, or I'm sorry, in 1894, that Sir Norman Lockyer showed convincingly that all times and almost everywhere, from the earliest shrines to the greatest cathedrals, the temples have been oriented astronomically. Now, that's true. A lot of places have been like that. Like I said, it's because they looked at that those celestial outside. Had to do with agriculture in some ways. It had to do with something to benefit humans. Raining season, non-raining season, um, migration season, not just for humans but for animals also, right? Animals will migrate to different places based on, the movement of the sun and the earth and the moon and so on and so forth. Matter of fact, I can tell you right now, as a fisherman, a lot of fishermen that I've been taught told me that there's certain times in the year to fish, and when the fish are biting the most. Fish don't usually bite as much in the wintertime. I've actually experienced that in the summertime. If it gets too hot, the fish are not really biting too much. It's a perfect timing. They say high tide, low tide, depending on the type of fish and what type of water you're in. Depends on when the fish or whatever you're trying to game will have these best times to catch fish. So it's not me saying it, it's just what I've experienced as a fisherman. So like I said, what I experienced as a fisherman here will be definitely different than what somebody experienced somewhere else around the world. But we're going to look at the sun, the moon, and stars, and we're going to determine when is the best time. Sometimes some people will say the best time to fish is during a full moon. Some people will say half a moon, but it just depends on where you're at around the world. The next tab, because the Gregorian calendar was introduced in Cusco only after Molina's time, the day of the new year related by him corresponds to May 25th or thereabouts. Observation towers that had been described by Garcilaso has been discovered in recent years by astronomers from the universities of Texas and Illinois. They found that sighting lines were proper for May 25th. According to the chroniclers, for Incas consider the year to begin at the winter solstice, equivalent to the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. But this event occurs not in May, but on June 21st, a difference of a full month. Now that's actually true. I actually did I actually went when I went to Cosmic Summit. If you know who Randall Carson is, I actually got a recording of him. It's on my YouTube channel. It's about Pilot Mountain in North Carolina. Matter of fact, Chris is from North Carolina. I'm going to be visiting him sometime next year for a powwow there. He invited me to go experience that with him. So I'm definitely going to take him on that offer, and I'm definitely going to go there. But when I went up there to Pilot Mountain, it was June 21st, and at the Pilot Mountain, when the shadow is going, or when the sun is going down, a shadow of a pyramid will appear on the ground, and you can see it, and it's very, very interesting. I got a video of it. What's his French Hawk, French Hawk, who is a Native American there from the Cherokees, if I'm not mistaken, and he gives a very great presentation on a ritual song that he presents that they did. I'm not sure if it was the same one that they did thousands of years ago, but it's something that they do when the solstice happens. It's a very beautiful singing and understanding what he was talking about. He gave a little history of it. So check that out on my YouTube. It's Pilot Mountain 2025. Very, very interesting. Almost done with these tabs, but we're going to carry forward. All right. So the next one says, perhaps one day Indianologists will see the similarities in the details of the coat of Viracocha, Brahma with the seven eyes, and the Israelite Yahweh. In the classic antiquity and in the Orphic cult, there were sacred images of the mystic egg. Why shouldn't the same happen in the great sanctuary of Cusco? Now, that's interesting that he talks about the egg, because when you go to the Islamic faith, they have a cosmic egg, and the Egyptians actually have a cosmic egg, depending on which city you go to. Some indigenous individuals, Native Americans, have a cosmic egg. The egg is very important to a lot of things. It makes sense, right? Women have eggs, right? That's the birth of humans come through women, right? So, the creation of a cosmic egg for the creation of humans or Earth or universe or whatever you want to call it, um, would definitely makes sense to me. So I don't find that far fetched. But I could tell you that Yahweh was known as a god of war, and he wasn't a god that some people would think that they will worship. Is to be a, to be noticed or to be known as a god of war. Chris would tell you you have to do some pretty crazy things to be known as that. I mean, Yahweh wasn't somebody that should have be worshipped as a God that was caring and loving. He was a God of war. He wasn't a loving God. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Let me get to the next page. All right, these pages. Here we go. All right. The Sumerian pantheon was headed by an Olympian circle of 12, for each of these supreme gods had to have a celestial counterpart, one of the 12 members of the solar system. That's not actually true. First of all, the Sumerians didn't know but 5 planets. Okay. It wasn't until much later when that number came up to 12, meaning it had to go through the Akkadians, Babylonians, Syrians, and so on and so forth. But just to keep it very simple and stupid, like I said, I like people when they tell me things and keep it simple and stupid for me. Is basically the Sumerians didn't believe in the 12. Matter of fact, if you go to electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, okay, there were 4 individuals that were important for the creation of humans. That was Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, and Anu, or An, A-N. And it was only 4 individuals. A lot of times it went from 4 to 7 to 12. It just depended. Zachariah Sitchin picked 12 because he tries to use that as his way of saying that there was 12 planets out there. That's why he called this first book the 12th planet. But I can tell you right now, according to Samuel Noah Kramer, to Dr. Michael S. Heiser, to George Smith, Andrew George, and there's another person that I can't have on the top of my head. The Sumerians only knew of 5 planets. They didn't know no more than that. Anything that you could see with your naked eye, that's what the Sumerians did. When technology became more advanced, that's when the number rose from 5 to 12 and so on and so forth. But the next tab, he says, this division, which did not go uncontested, gave Enki and his sons the lands of Ham, the brown black people of Africa, the civilization of the Nile Valley, and the gold mines of southern and western Africa. Now, this is interesting that he said this. I think this was at the point when I started realizing that if you take everything extraterrestrial, everything alien out of this book, you're left with nothing but black people. And this is literally from Zachariah Sitchin. I challenge anybody who don't believe me, go back and read Zachariah Sitchin's books. And you will see if you take out anything that has to do with extraterrestrial or aliens, it all boils down to black people. And this is literally scary because, and I don't mean it's scary as, black people couldn't do this. I mean it's scary because a lot of people won't believe it. Literally, this is what it says. This division, which did not go uncontested, gave Enki and his sons the lands of Ham, the brown black people. The Sumerians were known as the black-headed people. When you look at how it's broken down and what they meant, it's strange that that Africans or black people or whatever, how you want to call them, and I wrote a perfect article on that about what is described as black. And I give you a good example. I'm African American with German, but my hair I don't have the same type of hair as what people would say is African like. But guess what? When you go to Ethiopia, they have hair just like this. Curly hair, straight hair. It's strange. You go to India, they have hair like that. That's why the Dravidians from India were known as, matter of fact, India was known as the second Ethiopia, which is very strange, right? A lot of people don't know that, but I'm here to tell you that's what it is. But it says right here, it says it was the knowledge imparted by the pantheon that needs of the gods who had come to earth and the leadership of Thoth that directed the African Olmecs. Now, this is what's interesting to me. Zachariah Sitchin says that in his book, page 183 of this book, The Lost Realms of the fourth book of his chronicles, he says African Olmecs. Now, I've been in plenty of Twitter spaces. I've been in twin/x spaces where people would talk about Olmecs, and they would tell me that they weren't black. The Olmecs weren't black. Well, what is black? Anybody with brown to dark brown skin is black. It's considered black. Jamaicans are considered black, but they don't consider themselves Black Americans. This is no different than Aboriginals. I was just, matter of fact, I went to the VA yesterday with my cowboy hat and everything. I went to the VA hospital, and a lot of people, I had two people ask me, they said, "Man, are you from Australia?" And I was like, "No, I'm from here, from this city right here." And he was like, "No, you look Aboriginal, from the Aboriginal Australians." I said, "No, I'm not from Australia at all." But what is interesting is uh, the fact that there's a confusion on what is black. Okay, anybody from dark brown, from light brown to dark brown is considered black. It just that's their skin tone. That's what it is. Whether they Black American, African American, Black American, African American, you have uh, uh, Germans, matter of fact, who are dark skinned like me, they don't consider themselves black. They say they're German, and nobody can tell them nothing different because the word black has been distorted and used to basically put people down there, and a lot of people don't want to associate themselves. But let me just tell you straight up, Dominicans, some of them, Ortiz, me and Ortiz stood right next to each other. You would think I was more Hispanic than he was until he opened his mouth, right? Literally, because of the simple fact that he had the same type of skin. Well, not anymore at least, because a lot of people bleach their skin. But the fact is anybody that has light brown to dark brown. And what's interesting is, like I said, in page 183, this is where I started figuring out that if you take out the extraterrestrial and alien aspect out of his books, it has to do with Africans or black people, I should say, at least. And the reason why is because, like I said, he says it was the knowledge imparted by the pantheon, the needs of the gods who had come to earth, and the leadership of Thoth that directed the African Olmecs and bearded Near Easterners to the other side of the world. Now that's when I decided when I read that for like the fifth time, I was like, Sammy Sosa's another one. Yep, you got that right, Michael. Sammy Sosa's another one. Definitely. Facts, 100%. Can't take it that way. Is that he says the word African Olmec. So when I hear people say, Africans didn't have nothing to do with it, and Zachariah Sitchin never talked about this, that, and the third, I can tell you right now, they never read his books, because he says in page 183 of this book, he literally puts the word African Olmecs together. So when people say that the Olmecs weren't African, Zachariah Sitchin backs up. And this is where I say not everything that everybody says is right or wrong. You have to be able to decide what it is. Now, what I've read from they came before us, they came before Columbus or something like that. I can't remember. Ivan von Sertima, he wrote a book. Can't remember the exact title, but I think it's They Came Before Columbus. I think that's the title of it. He actually says that the Olmecs possibly came from Mali, and it's because of their headdress that they were wearing. The helmet was only found in a certain part in Africa. This helmet was only found in certain parts in the world, and it was in Africa, in Mali, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'll be going over it in the future, of course. But it was because of the type of helmets or headdress that they were wearing. That's why. And then a lot of people, when they look at the Olmec heads, they only see the front side of it, but they don't see the back of it, right? And you can see that their hair is braided. Now, a lot of people would say, I've heard people say, well, the Vikings had braided hair. The Vikings' hair was not considered braided type hair. Braided means that it has to be 3 strands of types of hair. The Vikings, from what I understand, they only had 2 strands. And I can tell you right now, there is no depiction on this planet that I found that actually said that they actually had braided hair. That came from somewhere down the line. Um, Prove me wrong. I would love to be proved wrong. Give me some kind of depiction of that. But their type of braids was not a braided type of hair. But like I said, the omics, when you look at it from the backside of their head, you could tell that they had some type of braided type of hair. Let's see. Here's another thing that Zachariah Sitchin says. Amazingly, the same depiction appears on stone tablets from Ija. So what is this in reference to? Figure 101. Let me see. Let me read. Let me go back and read the paragraph above it. It says, is it possible that the people from those distant lands had crossed the Pacific and come to the Andes in prehistoric times? The link that evidently existed is confirmed by depictions illustrating the feats of an ancient Near Eastern hero whose tales were told and retold. He was Gilgamesh, ruler of Uruk, the biblical Eric, who reigned around 2900 BC. He went and searched the hero of the deluge story, whom the gods and granted according to the Mesopotamian version. Immortality, basically. His adventures were told in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was translated in antiquity from Sumerian into other language of Near East. One of his heroic deeds, the wrestling with the defeat of 2 lions with his bare hands, was a favorite pictorial depiction by ancient artists at this one on the Hittite monument. Amazingly, the same depiction appears on stone tablets from AIJA and nearby sites. Okay, so let's just put it like this. They didn't have lions on that side. They had jaguars and different types, cougars and stuff like that, right, on that side of the world. Man have been wrestling with animals from the beginning of time. Why? Because we've been trying to domesticate animals from the beginning. So domesticating lions is not hard, because you can find in African countries that they have actually kings will ride lions. I mean, literally ride them like some people will ride horses, right? This is no different than anything around the world. When they see an animal that's a predator or strong or powerful, man was trying to tame it. This is very, 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 very interesting. Hey, Chris said something interesting. The Khoisan were very light skinned and they ruled the southern half of Africa. They were pushed out, assimilated by the Bantu expansion. 100% true. Not only, let me click on it, make sure he didn't say it, because I don't want to take away from his shine. I just ordered African Discovery of America by Leo. Okay, yeah. So I want to go to this right here, the Khoisan. The Khoisan tribes, San people, S-A-N, they're also known as that. The San people, S-A-N people. They have eyes like Asians. Now, what I've studied and what I've learned from haplogroups, Asians can trace their background all the way to the Khoisan tribe. These individuals are light-skinned, brown individuals from Africa who look like an Asian individual. Mistakenly could be like Japanese, Chinese, and so on and so forth. But these are the individuals matter of fact, because Chinese people, Japanese people they're not the oldest people on this planet as far as what we know as today. That has been changed because of the new discoveries. But the San people, the Khoisan people, these individuals are they hold one of the oldest haplogroups in the world. One of the oldest haplogroups in the world, if not the oldest. It could have changed since the last time I've studied and researched this, but definitely they have one of the oldest haplogroups. And these are individuals that have light brown to dark brown, well, more light brown than dark brown. Of course, they changed because of the like Chris said, the Bantu people. That stuff has they were pushed out and stuff like that. Let's get to the next page. Man, all right, my allergies are bothering me today. I was almost postponing this because of my allergies, but a couple of people told me they were staying up late to listen to this from the other side of the world. So I said I can't do that to them. Okay, so the next tab, he says the obliquity of the ecliptic, as the scientific term is, for the orientation of the Kalahasas astronomical lines of sight, he found was 23 degrees 8 by 48, based on the formulas determined by astronomers at the International Conference of uh, Ephemeris in Paris in 1911, which takes into account the geographical position and elevation of this site. Okay, so which site is this? Because I marked this. Let's see. Hold on. Let me do something real quick. Let me see. Let me see. Let me flipping through some pages. What is this in reference? Okay, so it's in reference to let's see. What is Kalasasaya. Kalasasaya. So basically they're just trying to say that this was he was saying that this was used as a let me see. Let me make sure, because this one I might have to read the whole thing because it's tab. Why did I mark this? Okay, yeah, pillars, standing pillars that formed a slightly rectangular enclosure, though not all the pillars that once had acted as anchors for continuous wall are still. Okay, so basically this part, page 221 to 222, it has a figure 121, and it's just you know what? I actually wrote on this tab that I'm still confused on this because he doesn't really break it down onto why he said this. So I'm just going to leave this one as it is. If you want to know what I'm talking about and you got this book, page 221 or 222, if you can break that down to me to understand simple and stupid, please help me, because I did write in there I didn't understand that. Let's go to the next tab. I just didn't get that one for some reason. Let's go to the next tab. Let's see. All right, let's see. It says God's house. Oh, wait. It is noteworthy that although both gold and copper were thus available in their natural state, and gold was even more suitable for use because, unlike copper, it does not oxidize. Near Eastern man of those early millennia did not utilize gold, but limited his use to copper. Now, I can tell you something. Let's see. Let me see before I take away the shine. When gold came into use at the beginning of the third millennium BC, or several centuries earlier, it was for enhancing the temples, literally God's house. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So you remember I was talking about how these that gold was used for different things. I wanted to say earlier that it was for temples. When you look at those stones in certain places, uh, you can they had these, like, the stones would be put together and they had these little things that were connected to it, and they didn't know what held it in place, of some type of anchor point or something. Some people believe it was gold, or silver or something used, but nobody really knows. I don't want to get too deep into the gold aspect because, like I said, gold was used for different usages, different places. Somebody says Mesopotamians, they're trying to put everybody in the category that this is why gold was used. That's not necessarily true. And I can tell you right now, the Sumerians didn't go out there looking for gold for their gods. The idea that the Sumerians, that the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru that orbit our sun every 3,600 years, came here to mine gold. There's no text. There's no actual text that they came here to mine gold for their atmosphere. No cuneiform tablet says that. When Billy Carson says that, I get so frustrated because there's no cuneiform tablet that said the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru that orbited our sun every 3,600 years just to mine gold. Nah, no. Okay. But anyway, while all that could be attributed to Sumerian know-how and acumen, what needs explaining is the fact that there was also the terminology and written symbols, initially pictographs, connected with mining and activity conducted in distant lands and not in Sumer. Yeah. I mean, we know that. Like I said, matter of fact, the oldest gold mines is in two places. Some people say it's in Africa, and I believe the other one is somewhere else, and I don't want to get it wrong, but it's somewhere in Europe, and I think it starts with a B. I'm not even gonna try to remember that. I'm gonna be going over that in the future because I actually have a book about that. But uh, let me just tell you this: the Sumerians did not believe the Anunnaki came from a planet named Nibiru. For one, two, they didn't come from a planet named Nibiru to mine gold here on planet Earth. There's no cuneiform tablet that says that. When they say depiction, matter of fact, the word he used was initially pictographs. Like I said, when you look at pictographic script, yes, they did mining, but they also did agriculture, right? So, and we know that they mined stones also. So there's no denying that. But to sit here and say that they needed gold for their planet, it's crazy. Let's go to the next tab. Indeed, by now, a surprisingly large number of maps from pre-Columbian times have been found, some as the Medician map of 1351, the Pizingi map of 1367, and others show Japan as a large island in the western Atlantic and significantly an island named Brazil midway to Japan. Others contain outliners of the Americas as well as of Antarctica, a continent whose features have been obscured by the ice covering it, suggesting that incredibly these maps were drawn based on data available when the ice cap was gone. A state of affairs that existed right after the deluge around 11,000 BC and for a while thereafter. Now that's true. There's different maps, the Paris map and so on and so forth. I mean, from what I understand, all these maps were used to enhance a bigger map, basically. But I can tell you right now, look, this is a map right here. Okay. Africa is the biggest continent, or not the biggest continent, but bigger than this. Why is Greenland damn near big as fucking Africa? Look, we can't get our maps right today. So let's just keep it simple and stupid. They are not depicting Africa correctly on this map. And they never have depicted Africa on this map on any map correctly. So when people say stuff like a bigger map or a bigger continent and this, that, and third, is the United States about the same size as Africa? This got to make sense of it. If we can't get our maps right today in 2025, then I know damn sure for a fact that they didn't have the maps right back then. So if anybody was to tell me, yo, this is an accurate map, I'll look at them like they were stupid, because it's not. The next one, and so it was that Lulu Amilu, the mixture god or mixture worker, was created out of genetic manipulation and the fertilization of an 8-woman's egg in a laboratory flask. The hybrids could not procreate. Female and Anunnaki had to act each time as birth goddesses. Now, in the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, I went over this before. There is no cuneiform tablet that says that they did it in some kind of lab or anything like that. Let me just make it simple and stupid. There were many species around when the first Homo sapiens touched Earth 300,000 years ago in Morocco, Africa, because that's where the oldest bones right now are found as Homo sapiens. We are considered Homo sapiens, but because we're advanced Homo sapiens, they added the extra sapiens. So we are considered, in technical terms, in more of a different type of way, Homo sapiens sapiens. Yo, yeah, that's crazy, right, Chris? Greenland been taking steroids. That's why they so big, right? Yeah, it's crazy how they depict the maps on here. But let's just keep it simple. When you read the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, when you understand the text and read them for yourself, I am, for one, that's trying to learn the cuneiform tablets and read the language for myself and understand it. When you read the transliterations, the translations, and understanding, yes, the Anuna / Anunnaki did create a new set of workers to toil the earth. Since there was different type of Homo sapiens around and different humans around that time frame, it's not hard. Let me just keep it simple, stupid. Dogs from a pit bull can have puppies with a chihuahua. A chihuahua can have puppies with a bulldog. The Doberman Pinscher can have puppies with the pit bull. As long as the species has the same genetic type of makeup, it's possible for them to have humans. That's why there's a missing link between us. But let's just keep it facts. You don't have to go into a laboratory to create a new human species. As long as right now we're the only human species on this planet, Homo sapiens sapiens. But when there were different species around, it's not hard. It wouldn't be far fetched that a Neanderthal had a relationship with a Homo sapien and they had a baby and they created a new species. It's not hard, right? And if you are capturing people from different places, you can breed them. I mean, the same thing with with dogs. So when they say when he said flask, like they was using, microscopes and insemination and all this other stuff. Nonsense. Enlil discovering that mankind had survived was enraged at first, but then relented. The Anunnaki, he realized, could still stay on Earth, but if they were to rebuild their centers and resume the production of gold, man must be enabled to proliferate and prosper and be treated no longer as a slave, but as a partner. Now, let me tell you something. Yes, Enlil did not want to tell the humans that the flood was coming. That's in the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. Enlil, it's not that he didn't want to tell humans. He was afraid that humans of that time were going to do something where nobody could survive. And I give you an example of this. Rich people right now, all these millionaires and billionaires, if there was some kind of cataclysm or some kind of event that was going to happen on this planet, only the rich and powerful people will survive. Yes, some people like us will survive, the ones that are on lower totem pole and all this other stuff. If we know how to survive in certain times, we would. But in reality, think about all the individual rich people that have all these bunkers and all these other things. I'm pretty sure they have some type of submarine, because there's actually a movie about that where, rich people will get on these submarines when the flood was, I can't remember what the movie's called, if anybody can remember the movie, that they had many submarines. You had to pay a price for it, and they had all the things that you needed to survive and so on and so forth. And it's interesting because of the simple fact that if there was a flood, I'm guarantee you that the people that could afford it to be on those things until the land, got better, they would. A good thing that Chris said was the Denisovans. Exactly, the Denisovans. They're a group of individuals that came around sometime, depending on the dates, and some people have their ancestry bloodline in them, DNA in them, no different than some people that have Neanderthals in them, right? So can we say that we're only one side of species? No, you're a mixed species. Some people are Homo sapiens sapiens with a little Denisovian in them, and some people are Homo sapiens sapiens with Neanderthals in them, right? So just keep that as facts, because that's what it is. The finds in around Teotihuacan of gold and bronze and artifacts leave no doubt that gold preceded bronze, i.e., 10 in that area. Okay, so yeah, like I was saying, gold wasn't always used everywhere. Some people use bronze, some use copper, some use tin, some use. It just depends on what usage was for that area. And as because we traded and migrated and so on and so forth, all this stuff enhanced our abilities as humans. Let's see. I got 1, 2, 3. This is I'm almost done. Here we go. The term Malku is obvious Near Eastern origin, where it meant, as it still does in Hebrew and Arabic, king. One of the few studies on Urus by W. Labara reports that Euromyths relate that we, the people of the lake, are oldest on this earth. A long time we are here, from before the time when the sun was hidden, before the sun hid himself. We were already a long time in this place. Then the Kolas came. They used our bodies for sacrifices when they laid the foundations for their temples. I just wrote that down. I tabbed that up because Malku means king. That's the only reason why I tabbed that up. And we further suggest that it happened not just circa 3100 BC, but exactly 3113 BC, the time of year and even the day from which the Mesoamericans began their long count. So the Mesoamericans began their long count around 3113 BC. Next tab, one of the rare academic studies admitting that the Olmecs, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I was talking about. This is why I had to do more research on what was considered black and what is considered Negroes or Negroid. This is what Zachariah Sitchin said. And this is why I said a lot that if you take the extraterrestrials, the aliens out of it, you're left with dark brown skin, light skin, black individuals. And it's because Zachariah Sitchin, like I said, if you take this out of his books, that's all you're left with. He says right here, one of the rare academic studies admitting that the Olmecs were Negroid. Africans was Africa, and the discovery of America by Leo Wiener, professor of Slavic and other languages at Harvard University, based on racial features and other considerations, but mostly on linguistic analysis. He concluded that the Olmec tongue belonged to the Mandi group of languages that originated in West Africa between Niger and Congo River. But writing in 1920, before the true age of Olmec remains became known, he attributed their presence in Mesoamerica to Arab seafarers and slave traders in Middle Ages. Now, this is where I started to believe that maybe Zachariah Sitchin was trying to convince people that they weren't necessarily always extraterrestrial, but he was trying to do a soft disclosure that what we find here on the Americas, that these individuals came from Africa. And this is where the out of Africa theory and all this other stuff came from. I talked about Bruce Fenton a lot because Bruce Fenton talks about how that these individuals came into Africa instead of out of Africa. And I'm definitely going to be doing a one on his book, and I'm going to break down how ignorant this man was when he came to sharing information about either inner theory Africa or out of theory. But remember when I was talking about the headdress, about the Olmec heads, this is where he was talking about. I tabbed it up. Like I said, I always tab my stuff up. And he says, it is there in West Africa, the country now called Ghana bore for centuries the name Gold Coast. Okay. And then when you look at, here we go, another part. Ivan von Sertima, because he actually quotes Ivan von Sertima, like I said, Zachariah Sitchin. He says they came before Columbus, set out to bridge the halfway century gap between the two previous academic works, tended toward the Kushite solution. It was then the Black Kings of Kush ascended the throne of Egypt as its 25th dynasty in the 8th century BC, trading in silver and bronze. And they probably, as a result of shipwrecks, also held sway in Mesoamerica. This is why I said when you take out all this extraterrestrial, all this ancient aliens crap out of his books, you're left with Africa. And Zachariah Sitchin, he, like I said, he uses sources, actual sources, to make his arguments, but he creates his own narrative. And that's why I don't understand where he got this Planet Nibiru crap from. Like, I wish he would have just had that discussion with Michael S. Heiser, because maybe we'd have got better information. But Zachariah Sitchin literally quotes Ivan von Sertima in his book, They Came Before Columbus. Okay. And that's why I say when you read Ivan von Sertima's, and I'm going to be doing a book on his also in the future, and doing another one on his book about how the Olmecs came from Africa. This is Zachariah Sitchin talking about in his books. Ivan van Sertima talks about it in his books, and so many other people. But my point is that what am I supposed to do with this information if Zachariah Sitchin is talking about this and saying these individuals are educated? Like he said, the Sumerians didn't have gold in their country. They got it from Africa. Okay. I'm sure individuals wasn't like were dumbfounded down there when they was mining gold. They matter of fact, some people say that the gold sites in Africa goes back 200,000 plus years. And they have sources for that. They did test and all this other stuff, but some people don't agree with that and it's still in the air. So I was thinking that when Zecharia Sitchin first wrote his book in 1976, he felt like these individuals came from planet Nibiru. And then he felt like maybe more research he started doing, he was trying to do a soft disclosure and say, hey, maybe that's not true. Let me start doing this. And that's probably why he never had this discussion with Michael S. Heiser. But I'm telling you right now, literally, this is what he says in his books. What another thing that I think that I found was interesting that he says was he says some other Black Africans he felt could have come over on Phoenician and Jewish ships between 500 BC and AD 200. Now this is on page 273. So y'all look, listen to me. I'm not going to sit here and argue with anybody about any information. I'm just going to tell you what I've read, what I tabbed up, what I understand. And that was literally the last tab that I had on this book. I'm going to do the fifth one probably next week. I'll probably finish out 5, 6, and 7 next week. I'll probably do 3 of them, all 3 next week, and then I'll go into the Anunnaki Chronicles, which is unpublished books that his niece published on behalf of him after he passed away, which describes the 3 different meanings of what Anunnaki means and Nephilim means. And I've went over this in the past, but I'm going to definitely do it again and go through that. Let's see. 3100 BC was still the beginning of the Bronze Age and the Nubian kingdom of Tassidi, and it is soon due to conflict with Egypt, but not confirmed exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of that in there. This information that's out there is so grand that you have to study a lot of stuff. Like I said, I know Zecharia Sitchin felt like a lot of stuff. The migration. Matter of fact, Bruce Fenton actually has said that he likes Zecharia Sitchin's information, some of his information, and he doesn't like some of his information. But Zecharia Sitchin literally gives him the same stuff that he talks about Africa a lot. He talks about how these individuals traveled and migrated from different places and so on and so forth. But it's just, Lil Vibe, I want you to go back. I'm going to read it because he knows about this. Tell me you still here. Just say yes. Just type in yes. I'm going to read this part to you because this is the part that, because you're very familiar with Ivan Van Sertima. And always, visit go to his Spotify if you love music about history, if you love hip hop, if you like DMX, if you like Nas, Jay-Z, and all these other individuals. Lil Vibe is on there. So let me tell you, right here, look right here on this page 273. I'm not sure if you can see it yet, but Zecharia Sitchin actually talks about Ivan Van Sertima, who studied the book They Came Before Columbus, and he talks about how the Olmecs were African individuals, that they came from Africa. So please go back and watch this. It's towards the end. It's an hour and 38 minutes, but if you go into the last 10 15 minutes before this, I actually break it down and tabbed up what he was talking about. So yes, Zecharia Sitchin talked about these individuals coming from Africa. The Olmecs were African. He used the words that. So I just wanted to point that out because Lil Vibe is on it with that book. Also, They Came Before Columbus, and like I said, Zecharia Sitchin mentions that. But I'm going to be doing the 5th one, the 6th one, and the 7th one next week. I'll probably do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then the week after that, I'll be going into the other books that he has, the Lost Book of Enki, and then the Anunnaki Chronicles. And then I will be going into the other books that I have. Like I said, I'm going to be doing this more often because I'm going to be focused more on my brand and what I'm trying to share and give you guys the sources. I have not yet met anybody except Lil Vibe. I can definitely say that Lil Vibe has Anytime I post something about something on with books about Egypt or Native Americans or so on and so forth, he would definitely post something behind that with the book that he read. Chris says Monument 13 at La Venta Olmec is the archaeological point proof pointing to Phoenician indigenous America contact circa 510 BC. Yeah, see, this is the information that is not just in Zachariah Sitchin's book, but Ivan van Sertima and other African scholars. And I want to point out something. A lot of people will say, some people have came up with this word, what is it, Afrocentric, to try to diminish, uh, um, what was the word I was trying to use? Diminish what the facts are as far as African contributions. Let me tell you something. Every Afrocentric, every Afrocentric individual that I've read from, they got information from places from white European individuals. One of my favorite authors, Guy Higgins, talks about, I'm deep into this. I actually did a the videos on that. Godfrey Higgins, Anacalypsis Volume 1 and 2, and the Celtic Druids. These books were written in the 1800s. 1870, 1833, I can't remember the 18 something. He wrote these books. So, and then you have Albert Pike, who talks about some of this stuff too in his books, Dogma. So when people say Afrocentric, what are you really saying when you say that? Are you saying that because Black people finally realized that they have some kind of information out there that they contributed things to the world, and because they started being educated and started learning from the white Europeans, that it makes people uncomfortable to know that Africans contributed to more to society than most people want to give credit to? If that's the case, then you don't want knowledge, because I'm telling you, every Afrocentric individual that I've read from got information from white Europeans. And the problem is that people like Albert Pike and Godfrey Higgins, in those days they shared their stuff. A lot of people wasn't listening to it because at those times, guess what? The transatlantic slave trade was happening, and certain people didn't want to give power to certain things. So just to keep it simple, stupid, I'm always going to just share what I've read, what I research, what I understand. And if you want to challenge me, please, let's have a challenge. We can get on live, or we can do pre-recorder, whatever way you feel more comfortable with. And I can show you my sources, but you got to give me your sources too and tell me what you believe in. And we're going to close this out with this, Chris. Afrocentrism is human-centric. Sorry, Vatican. Right on, brother. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody coming in. When I start doing these, it's always going to be around. Matter of fact, if you follow me on X or Facebook or Spotify or any of the places that I stream into, I have Twitch, I have X, I have my YouTube. Tell me what's a very comfortable time for you, where you would like to sit in live and ask questions and have a discussion while I'm live. I have no problem doing that. Adjusting my time schedule to benefit the majority of the group of individuals that follow me. I'm not here for recognition. I'm not here to gain money. I'm not here to go over people. Matter of fact, I had an individual just message me just last night while I was doing this. All right, peace out, Michael. I appreciate you coming in. You have a good day, brother. Take it easy. I had an individual message me and tell me that to really thank me and say, hey, I really like the way you present your information, and I love how you matter of fact, this is what they said. They said that basically because of their financial ability and their and what the situation they're in, is that they're happy that somebody like me takes the time, money, and sources that I have and bring history to the people without bringing a narrative. And most people who follow me, I don't have a narrative. I just share what I've learned, and I go on about it. And that's why I have on my series what I've learned from reading this book, as you can see. And I love just sharing what I've read, because I've read a lot of books. Matter of fact, I still have encyclopedias. I have encyclopedia that goes back to 1994. 1995, 97, 98, 2009, 1999, 2000, 2001, Science in the Future. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books, and I have about 30 other books of encyclopedias just sitting right over there. So I'm very into books. I'm very into knowledge, and all I'm going to do is share what I've learned. I really appreciate everybody coming in and listening to me. Let me know what the best time out there. I appreciate that, Vibe. You know, thanks, Chris. I appreciate you for your knowledge. And just like I said, I'm gonna do a podcast discussion with him on his books. And Lil Vibe has one of the best music out there. I listen to him all the time, especially when I'm doing laundry. I already told him that. You know what I'm saying? So hey, yo, go to Spotify and just play a song, and give him a give him support. Just support. Support is not hard. It's very simple. You just support somebody. So till next time, y'all, knowledge is power.